From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thank you very much, Ollie Barrett.
It's the BBG, not the BBC. You're listening to the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester.
And it's Wednesday show. Wednesday it is.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Lovely stuff. Well, the Irish journalist John Waters returns to the programme. I'm really excited about that. Excellent writer, a great author as well. Very famous and respected journalist back home. Lots to get into with John. Just like with Tony Gosling yesterday, I thought I would get a journalist to shoot the breeze with me on the big stories of the day. So John Waters joins me for an extended conversation. You'll tweet me, no doubt, so go ahead and do that. I hope your Wednesday has been pleasant. We've had a bit more thunder from down under. We've had a bit more thunder and a little bit of lightning. 3 days in a row now. Something's going on, I have no doubt. Something's going on. Something's going on. So I hope you're in fine fettle, as I just said, and you're, settling in for a bit of thought-provoking conversation. As if that's what you get, eh? I wonder if I was to hack the computers of the Indian Ministry of Defence and the Chinese Ministry of Defence and convince them that the other country was just about to launch a nuclear weapon. I wonder, could I get them to fire nuclear weapons on one another and kill 2 billion people? I wonder, would I get a gold star from Bill Gates and Prince Philip, I wonder. I might just do that. I can barely turn my own computer on, let alone hack into anybody else's. So the football is back tonight after 100 days in the wilderness. The football is back, or soccer to you Yankee listeners. 2 games, one at 6 and one at 8. Hallelujah! 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 Yes, the football is back. We have a game at 6 at Villa Park, I believe, and there's a game then a little bit later on at 8 o'clock. I'll watch a little bit of that if the future Mrs. Allen is inclined to allow me to do it. What would we have done, dear listener, without the football? What would we have done if the football never came back because of the virus?
Enjoy yourself and kill a granny is the answer.
That's the answer to every question. Lawrence Buckman there. But football has changed. Change has come to football. Football has changed. You heard Ollie Barrett there in the news. Extraordinary measures have been taken to keep the players safe. Safe. Extra shin pads. Will they be wearing helmets? No. They'll be kept as far apart from one another as possible until the game begins. And then they'll steam into one another. Here is Sky News' Martha Kellner. Stood outside Villa Park in Birmingham in the pissing rain, and she explains how football has changed, or how change has come to football. Martha!
But football will be returning in a very different guise from what fans remember, not least because there'll be no fans allowed inside these stadiums. We're just waiting for the...
No fans? We heard that, so she's standing outside and she's waiting for the team buses to pass her on their way into the stadium. And this is quite interesting.
For the bus to arrive, actually, the Aston Villa coach. I'll move out of the way so that you can get a clear shot of it.
Yeah, but it's radio now.
This is, in fact, the second Sheffield United coach.
The second Sheffield United coach? How many do they need?
Already had one coach arrive. They're arriving in 3 separate coaches.
3 separate coaches? 3? But as far as I remember, there is 11 players on a team, and they've got 7 substitutes, and these days they can introduce 5 of them. 3 coaches? Why?
To allow for that social distancing. It's just started to rain very heavily here at Villa Park.
I'm delighted.
They're now going into what they call the green zone.
They're going into the green zone?
Premier League stadiums will all be set up into three this is the third Sheffield United bus you can see arriving. The stadium's set up into three very distinct zones. The green zone, which will be patrolled by security.
By General Petraeus. David Petraeus, is patrolling the green zone, surely.
Security. Then inside that, the amber zone. That's open.
The amber zone.
To the people needed to fulfil the Premier League's contractual obligations. People like broadcasters, TV broadcasters, radio broadcasters, and the written press. But these players on those buses at the moment will have access to the red zone. Only 110 people will be granted access to that red zone, and all of those players will have what's called a COVID-19 passport.
A what now? A COVID-19 passport, no less.
Which has to show that they've tested negative for coronavirus in the last 5 days.
Now, it really starts raining here. The passport must show that they tested negative for coronavirus in the last 5 days. Wow.
Now, over the last 4 weeks, the Premier League has conducted more than 8,500 coronavirus tests.
Right, so in the last few weeks, Premier League conducted over 8,000 coronavirus tests.
Of those so far, only 16 tests have come back as positive. It's something like 0.008%.
0.008% came back as positive. Of course, the virus has been on the wane for months now. Isn't that extraordinary? What she just said there. Let's hear it again about the passport they must have.
And all of those players will have what's called a COVID-19 passport, which has to show that they've tested negative for coronavirus in the last 5 days.
A COVID passport, Scylla!
The unexpected
hits you between the eyes. Go on, Scylla.
the unpredictable.
That's the surprise you see. Surprise, surprise. Of course, the COVID passport will become the accessory that every little boy and girl must have. Get me the Ronaldo shirt, mummy, and the Ronaldo school bag, and the Ronaldo COVID passport. The COVID passport? We're properly fecked, aren't we? We're screwed. All that's left is me and you laughing at this shite. 5,500 people today signed a petition to have a supermarket village closed because 5,500 people were worried about the failure to enforce 2 meters. Honest to God, nearly 6,000 people went online to say, yes, close our local village with lovely boutique shops, close it because nobody is observing the social distancing. This is like people building their own gallows, eh? Pass me the spirit level there, Billy. But they'll hang you, Rich. Give over, you crazy conspiracy theorist, eh? 11 minutes past the hour. John Waters, live on the Richie Allen Radio Show in about 15 minutes' time. Last night, Sky News ran a programme which I've been talking about because I knew it was coming, and it was called Race and Revolution. Is change going to come? Race and Revolution, is change going to come? And it was hosted by Gillian Joseph. Gillian is a black lady and a good television presenter now. She often doubles up with Stephen Dixon on Sky News weekends. I'm not just saying that. She is quite good, Gillian. Black lady. All of the main speakers were black. The actor David Oyelowo, he was on it. The former minister Sam Gyimah was on there. A businesswoman and a champion of race inclusion, Karen Blackett, who's black, and BAFTA-winning TV presenter David Olusoga. And they had a virtual audience. Now, this was creepy old stuff now. I don't mind telling you. This is creepy stuff. Some of it. First of all, it was an incomplete panel. Very many well-known black men and women disagree that society is institutionally racist. I know, because I've had some of them on this programme recently. And they were conspicuous by their absence. The panel was on there to tell horror stories about racism in the UK and a virtual audience, some of whom were white, were there to nod along and to ask leading questions. Little bit creepy. Here's the successful actor David Oyelowo. Have a listen to what he says. Pay attention at the back there now. Have we got him? Have I got that? Have I got that? Have I got... I do. Here's David Oyelowo on Sky News last night.
There was so much about Derek Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's neck that was symbolic of what we as Black people have had to endure for centuries. Whether it's the enslavement of Black people, whether it's the colonization of so much of Africa and what we still endure now in modern life, and how long we have been begging, pleading, imploring that we be seen as fully human. There is this phrase that has crept into our parlance now, which is gaslighting. You are made to feel insane as a Black person by calling out these things. And one of the jewels in the crown when it comes to systems of oppression is making the oppressed feel like they are lying, feel like they are complaining, feel like they have a narrative in their head that doesn't correlate with reality. It's what happens to people who are enduring domestic abuse. The abuser convinces them that they are exaggerating. It's what we have done traditionally to women who have been raped. Even in the judicial system, we have made it so that they don't feel able to cry out because we distrust them on the basis of the evidence that they are giving, that they are being harmed.
He compares Black people crying racism to victims of sexual abuse who are not believed. We are gaslit, he says. I want you to listen to the first 20 seconds of this again, because none of this was challenged by Gillian Joseph. And it really should have been challenged.
There was so much about Derek Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's neck that was symbolic of what we as Black people have had to endure for centuries. Whether it's the enslavement of Black people, whether it's the colonization of so much of Africa, and what we still endure now in...
What we still endure now, we. David Oyelowo is a very successful actor, and a very good one by all accounts. He was in Selma, wasn't he? Amongst other films. And he's had a pretty privileged upbringing. He was born in Lagos. He was born in Oxford. Family moved to Nigeria because they are Nigerian. His dad worked for the national airline. His mum worked for a railway company. He went to a boarding school. Very expensive one. Family did well. They came back to London, settled in Islington, where he was sent to some of the finest drama schools in the country. So I fail to see how David Oyelowo could say we when talking about oppression. But none of this was challenged by the utterly silent Gillian Joseph. It gets a bit even a bit more spooky. All the speakers said white privilege was real and we had to accept that we enjoyed the benefits of colonialism and so on, so on, so on. It was grim, no challenge from anyone. And then it came down to solutions. We'll hear from the actor again in a minute. Karen Blackett, Black lady, government advisor on race and an advertising executive. Talks about solutions, including safe rooms and listening circles. You have to hear this twice to believe your ears and to compute what it is you are being told. Karen Blackett on solutions.
I have seen in the last few weeks my leaders at WPP have get involved with...
Right, hang on a second now. Let's go back to the start of that again. She works for a company called WPP. And what are they doing to deal with institutional racism? This is phenomenal.
I have seen in the last few weeks my leaders at WPP have get involved with more listening circles, be involved in more safe rooms that we've been running for our Black colleagues, to hear for themselves what is happening, to hear the outpouring of grief.
Oh my God. And again.
I have seen in the last few weeks my leaders at WPP get involved with more listening circles, be involved in more safe rooms that we've been running for our black colleagues to hear for themselves what is happening, to hear the outpouring of grief.
Do you know, thank God I'm self-employed, eh? Thank God I don't work for a company in the city. How are you, Richie? Are you joining the conference on the Barclays account at 11 o'clock? No, I'm sorry. It's my weekly re-education session with the black dude from Inventory, where he'll pour out his grief on me and I'll say, I'm sorry, I am truly sorry. Can I give you some money? Will you have my wife? Will you?
What kind of fuckery is this?
Safe rooms for black employees. Listening circles where they'll get to pour out their grief and explain to their colleagues how racist they are. It's shocking. She goes on to say that we'll need to check our circles as well. Our circles.
Check your circle. Who are the closest 4 people that you go to?
Check your circles.
At work, when you want to have a sounding board, when you want to get advice, when you want to talk about what went right or what went wrong. Who are those 4 people? If those 4 people are very similar to you in terms of background, in terms of social class, in terms of education, in terms of race, then you're not doing anything to help create more inclusion and more diversity. Check your circle.
Check your circle. And why should we ultimately check our circle? What does it boil down to?
And make a difference so that you have more diversity of thought.
Make a difference so that you'll have more diversity of thought. Wow. I used to briefly get a little bit worried about getting old. You know, because I was a bit of a madman when I was younger, you know. I lived life. I enjoyed myself, you know. And I used to worry about getting into my 40s and 50s. I'm delighted now. And this isn't depression talking. I'm delighted that I'm approaching my 50s. I'm 45 now. Because I know where this all ends up. And by the time it gets there, I'll be too old to give a shit anyway. This is insane, this. So let's go to the actor again, David. Very famous actor, David Oyelowo. Let's have a listen to his solution for this.
Well, like I've said before, we are dealing with systems of oppression.
Systems of oppression. Privileged lad, went to a military boarding school. Parents worked for the Nigerian government. Went to very expensive drama schools. He had a damn sight better start in life than I did. And I'm not getting into me now because it doesn't matter. Well, you hear this horse shit.
They have been designed and they have been built, and they were not built by black people. They were built by white people. People balk at that. And it's not that you're saying to every white person alive now that you built it, but you benefit from it.
We didn't build it. We didn't drag people kicking and screaming from their homes on slave ships. We didn't hang people in the deep south, disgusting things that went on. We didn't say to people you couldn't sit at a restaurant table. We didn't tell people to get to the back of the fucking bus. But apparently we benefited from that. All of us. White people. We benefited from that. Yeah.
And what we are saying is that you have to acknowledge that, accept that, because the reason it was built was to harness power.
We have to accept it now.
What we are now asking as black people is for you to cede power, to share power.
To cede power. Then he corrects himself and says to share power.
To allow us in, whether it's my industry or any of the...
But you were fucking left in. You were left in. You've been in some of the biggest films and television shows in recent years. You privileged bastard, you. Hey? Mother and father working for the government in Nigeria, boarding schools. Who the fuck are you speaking for? Hey, I didn't go to any boarding school. When I wasn't having the head kicked fucking in by my father and struggling and my mother not being able to put food on the table. Where was the privilege then? It's lunacy this that nobody will call this out. And ironically, black people are calling it out, but of course they're not invited to the table to discuss it. No. You get utterly privileged arseholes like David Oyelowo calling out calling out oppression when he never saw oppression in his fucking life. It's insane, this. It really is. Ah! Oh, Jesus. I'm just going to drop the monologue. I'm going to get John Waters on and see what he has to say about it. I'm going to do a phone-in on this very early next week because a number of black people have said to me, I totally disagree with you, Richie, so I want to come on and take you on. Well, fucking have at it. I'll open the phone next week and we'll see what's what. You can tell me about how oppressive I've been to you. Come on and tell me how my existence, a white guy from a working class housing estate in Waterford, how my fucking being has in some way impacted negatively on your life. Explain that to me and I'll give you the radio show. You can fucking have it. Here's Bobby Darren and Matt the Knife on your Richie Allen radio show. Back with John Waters in a minute. Bobby Darren on the Richie Allen radio show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester, 27 minutes past the hour. Went a bit mad there, Ted. Don't like doing that. Don't like losing my temper. And it's not so much with the actor, to be honest. It isn't. David Oyelowo. It's not him. It isn't him. The Royal Shakespeare Company actor who had a very nice life by his own admission. It's not him. It's the worthless media that won't challenge. That won't say, come on, man, will you? Who do you want to cede power? The hundreds of thousands of families in the north of England that are living at a subsistence level. White working class families. Are they privileged? Does their existence has it somehow come about as part of a benefit from colonialism? And do they somehow need to cede power to you? Or share power with you? Who are you talking about? People in Hull, people in Sheffield, people in Manchester, in Gorton, in Manchester, in North Manchester, in Swinton, in Salford, people who haven't got a pot to piss in. And what they do, these people, is they ultimately drag guys like me down. Guys who know that this is identity politics bullshit. Divide and conquer. You end up in a swamp with all of these people, these social justice warriors, arguing on their level because it's the only way to get into the conversation. It's the only way to get to the table. Is to start pointing out that, well, there are a lot of people in this country who can barely put food on their table, if at all. They're not ethnic minority, and they haven't ever had any privileges in their lives. Of course, once you do that, you're into the identity politics game, and they're rubbing their hands with glee. And by they, I don't mean black people. I mean social justice warriors. Social justice warriors. Muppets. Virtue signalers who jump in on this bandwagon. It's insane. It's so patently, obviously ridiculous, this notion of white privilege and the need to have safe spaces at work and listening rooms where black people can just say, right, I've had enough of this phone call, I've had enough of doing this account, I'm going to go to a room and pour my grief out. Very good friend of mine said to me yesterday, she said, this is what happens when comedy is sanitized to the point where it's unrecognizable from the comedy that we grew up with 2 or 3 decades ago, when satirists, cartoonists, stand-up comics would have torn this asunder, ridiculed it through humour, laughed in the faces of people like Karen Blackett. Oh, it's great that my company has introduced safe spaces and safe rooms and bunkers now for people who feel that they're being so oppressed that they need to pour their hearts out. Meant it, I'm glad that in a few years' time, when this reaches its inevitable conclusion, I won't give a flying proverbial. I won't care. I won't give a shit then. By then, the last of my hair will be gone. I'll have no teeth. My liver will be gone because I'll have begun to drink 1.5 litres of Bacardi a day. I won't give a fuck. When it comes to it, I won't care. There's no stopping this. It's a juggernaut. What are you going to do? I'm waiting for John Waters to check in. He's a little late. That's okay. These things happen. I'll read some of your comments while we go along. And I do mean it. Next week I am going to open the phone to those of you from an ethnic minority background who totally disagree with me. And I'm not going to be rude to you. I'm not going to shout at you. I'm going to strongly disagree with you. But I'll give you the platform and I will give you equal time. Convince me that my existence is somehow a hindrance to your progression through this lunatic asylum we call life. Convince me that I was privileged from birth. I've never sought sympathy. I had it rotten growing up. I had it rotten in school. Everything I ever achieved, I achieved through my own ability and dogged determination and perseverance. I wouldn't go a fucking way. I'm like a fucking plague if I want something. If I'm not good enough, and I wasn't, I learned. And I got better. And I came back. And if I still wasn't good enough, well, I'll show you. I got nothing because of the colour of my skin, and I can only speak for myself. Seed power, imagine. Give up your jobs. Give up your job and give it to a minority. Show that you're a man who understands. How about fuck off? How about that? David Oye Low. How about fuck right off? There's never been a radio show like this before, and there'll never be one like it ever again, will there? When it goes. Hi to Donkey Oti. Hi to Base Ninja. And Spiro Skouras from activistpost.com, who's a real journalist. A really good one. He says, Richie, eventually we'll all turn into Shane McGowan. And at Christmas time, if we're all alive, and please God we will be, Spiro has an incredibly funny true life story to tell about Shane McGowan, which we're saving for Christmas. Even though Spiro's listeners, which are legion, they might know the story already, but some of you won't know. He's going to come on and tell me that story on December 23rd. The 23rd of December. Now. So we'll give John a few minutes and we'll see how he's getting on. He might have been detained. Boris Johnson was in a minor crash today. Did you see that? The Prime Minister was part of a motorcade, and apparently, as it was going really slow, a protester approached his car to shout some obscenities, presumably, understandably, at Bojo, and it caused the car behind Bojo to give it a little bit of a love tap. So, the media went mad for about 10 minutes, and there you go. Tell you what we'll do. Here's Dionne Warwick. We'll see what's happening with John Waters. When we come back, I'll read more of your tweets. How about that? Dionne Warwick on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Lovely tune that, eh? It's another swelteringly warm and humid afternoon in Salford in Greater Manchester. I think John Waters might have forgotten that he was on the programme. If he has, I don't mind. It happens. We were booked for 5:30 this afternoon. He should be with me now, but he's a busy bloke and things happen. And in this business of producing and editing independent radio all by yourself, belt and braces, it doesn't work. You can't be booking people on standby, you know? You can't be doing that. Sweltering all day. Tell you what we'll do. We'll do this very briefly. When we come back, there are other things we can talk about. Thank heavens. There are other things we can talk about. Back with you in about 60 seconds.
Renowned healer Mark Boyarsky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Boyarsky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markboyarsky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Welcome back. Do check out Mark's YouTube channel, Mark Boyarsky. It's fantastic. He did an excellent video yesterday or the day before, which I did share, and it's on the Facebook page for this program. So check it out, and you'll do a lot worse than take a listen to Mark Boyarsky. Great guy. We'll have him back on the program. I want to say hi to my mate Patricia Braunschweiler as well, who's in Switzerland. How you doing, Patricia? She was inquiring after my insomnia. I've had insomnia for years and years and years. And I do have one or two listeners that I talk to from time to time about insomnia. They say to me, "Oh, I've had it for years as well, Richie." And it's a strange thing because you kind of get to learn to live with it. And after a while, it just becomes manageable. And I've asked, from time to time over the years, I've asked my audience about natural things that one might take to ease the insomnia. And I've gotten some advice over the years. And I've tried one or two things. And I've been very positive because I think when you try something natural, you've got to be positive about it. You can't be skeptical, you know. You've got to think, yeah, this is going to work. But nothing has really eased it. So, no, it's a strange one. 4 hours pretty much maximum most nights, sometimes 3. You just kind of get on with it, you know. I think it's easier when you're responsible for yourself from a work point of view. I think if I was working for somebody else, and I was never the best employee anyway, I'm telling you, yeah. Not the most easygoing guy in the world ever, the BBG. And there would be a queue of people whom I worked for in the past to say, yeah. Oh, what a bollocks he could be. Absolutely. But, I think if I was working in the private sector for somebody else, I think I would go absolutely mad. But the fact that I get up really early and I go through the papers and we take the dogs out, it makes it kind of easier for want of it. I don't know. I think I've resigned myself to, like Edgar Allan Poe and his approach, his attitude to sleep. Little slices of death. Yes. Better off not sleeping, maybe. I don't know. No sign of John. I have sent him an email and he may come back to me. And if he does, happy days. We'll get him on. And if he doesn't, we'll reschedule. That's the way it goes. The Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden, is giving the government briefing on COVID at the moment. I mean, this is farcical. It's farcical. You've got the ginger troll, Nicola Sturgeon, every day, just before lunchtime, every day in Scotland, talking about the latest developments in the COVID pandemic. How many more people have died? When we're going to be easing the lockdown restrictions? And all of this bullshit. It's pure theatre. And I've had a message from Jean Ann. You will remember earlier this week, Dr. Marcus de Bruin was on the programme. And I really enjoyed having him on. He's a courageous doctor who is based in Rush in County Dublin. And he's championed the elderly, the senior citizens in my country. And what's happened to them and how they've been left exposed by recklessness or carelessness or something more serious, if you believe Vernon Coleman. And he's also challenged Dr. Marcus de Bruin the necessity of the lockdown anyway. And of course he's been attacked. But I enjoyed his company and he will come back on the programme again. Jean Ann says to me, Richie, Marcus did another interview after he came on with you and he talked about taking his 2 small daughters down to the supermarket in Rush to pick up a few plants for the garden and how suddenly they tightened their little hands in his. They were frightened about the virus and they were scared of people. And in this interview Marcus did, he said it was heartbreaking that the children were terrified of the proximity of people because of the propaganda about the virus. And I always doff the cap and tip a nod to my old mate David Icke. I always do it when appropriate. And others who predicted this. Who read the terrain, didn't they? They read the terrain and said this is where it's going. They talked about, over the years, David and others, and Jim, rest in peace, about the negative energy, about terrifying children and scaring people in general. But what that does, how that transforms the energy. I know this to be true because, in terms of the children, because again, some of my neighbours have told me, and they are sceptical, thank heavens, they're sceptical of this bullshit. And they've told me their kids are terrified. Met somebody in the park the other day who listens to the show and has a child of 7, and a 7-year-old didn't want to go to a birthday party. Yeah. I remember when I was 7 years of age, birthday parties meant, well, it was utopia. It was utopia. It was heaven on earth. It meant running around like a mad thing for 3 or 4 hours, gorging yourself on jelly and ice cream, inhaling bowls of M&Ms, vomiting, feeling better, and then running around with your mates, bursting balloons, kicking footballs, playing kiss and chase with the girls. Now they're terrified to go to birthday parties. I don't want to go, Dad, because I might get sick. I don't want to go because I might get sick. 15 minutes to kick off in the Premier League, eh? Sheffield United play Aston Villa at Villa Park in Birmingham. We heard Martha Kellner describe the scene earlier on. Do you want to hear that again? Not just for the sake of filling, and I'm not really filling here. Listen to this again. This is the new normal, as explained by Martha Kellner, standing at Villa Park in Birmingham as the season is about to recommence after 100 days with no supporters. Listen to this madness now.
But football will be returning in a very different guise from what fans remember, not least because there'll be no fans allowed inside these stadiums. We're just waiting for the bus to arrive, actually, the Aston Villa coach. I'll move out of the way so that you can get a clear shot of it. This is in fact the second Sheffield United coach. They've already had one coach arrive. They're arriving in 3 separate coaches to allow for that social distancing. It's just started to rain very heavily here at Villa Park. They're now going into what they call the green zone. The Premier League stadiums will all be set up into 3 this is the 3rd Sheffield United bus you can see arriving. The stadium's set up into 3 very distinct zones. The green zone, which will be patrolled by security. Then inside that, the amber zone, that's open to people needed to fulfil the Premier League's contractual obligations. People like broadcasters, TV broadcasters, radio broadcasters, and the written press. But these players on those buses at the moment will have access to the red zone. Only 110 people will be granted access to that red zone, and all of those players will have what's called a COVID-19 passport, which has to show that they've tested negative for coronavirus in the last 5 days. Now, over the last 4 weeks, the Premier League has conducted more than 8,500 coronavirus tests.
Yeah, basically the COVID passport is where we're going. You know, the digital health passport, which we talked about on the programme, for everybody in the future, and social crediting and all of that. I've had a message from Spiro. Spiro said, Richie, I'm not doing anything. I'll come on and have a chat with you for a few minutes. Why not? The brilliant Spiro Skouras, whom you can find, of course, these days at activistpost.com. And if you haven't already subscribed to his YouTube channel, there is only one Spiro Skouras. And he's a proper gent for jumping in. How you doing, Spiro?
Hey, Richie, thanks so much for having me. I'm doing well despite all of the craziness that continues to escalate on a daily basis here at this point.
How can you even thank me? Thank you for helping me fill here. I really appreciate it. What do you make of what the Sky Sports correspondent said about the football players needing to have COVID passports, which shows that they've had a successful test against the virus. That's pretty much what we expect will be rolled out for the population, don't we?
Absolutely. She said it clear as day there, and that this is the public rollout, basically. This is the marketing campaign to condition the public, to prepare them and get them ready for the idea that this is the new normal that we've been hearing about for so long. And so, it's funny you mentioned that. There was an article that just came out here recently talking about the world's first coronavirus-free flight will be from Madrid to the Canary Islands, and they will be piloting this program of the digital health passport, and it's going to be taking place soon. They don't provide any dates here, but apparently everything is all confirmed and ready to go with the government of the Canary Islands, and they're looking to, and the Minister of Tourism from the Canary Islands. So this is something that has been in place for a while. It takes time to set up this infrastructure.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden everything is ready to go at the same time. So very suspect.
It's rotten, isn't it? And I suppose we can talk about gender politics and identity politics just for a moment. Because when I lose my patience, I swear it's never for effect. I genuinely do lose it. I'm in an independent studio here all by myself, and I think of where this all leads, and we're fighting about white privilege and the need to cede power to people. I mean, you heard some of that earlier on. This is staggering stuff, isn't it? This notion that, we've somehow benefited because of the colour of our skin, and we have to have safe rooms in businesses for black people or ethnic minorities to air their grievances, and we have to listen. And what really upsets me about that, and I do believe, of course, that racism does exist and that black people and ethnic minorities are sometimes exposed to it, but I don't believe that it's institutional. What really kills me, Spiro, is while we're dealing with that, what you just described there goes ahead, and in fact it gains 15 or 20 steps while we're fighting over our identity and our religion and everything else. How depressing is that?
Well, it is many things. It is depressing, it's frustrating, it's concerning when we see the narrative being, pushed out there by these mainstream channels, by the establishment, and then being absorbed like a sponge by the general public. Because to yourself, who has been calling this out, and myself and many others who see this plain as day, this is the classic divide and conquer strategy that we are falling into. They keep us so busy fighting over things, whether it be race, religion, gender identity, politics, class, whatever, you name it. We're so busy fighting about that we don't see how we're all being targeted by the same system of oppression. So it's escalating, and I believe it's going to escalate more as we approach the U.S. presidential elections here coming up in a few months.
Brilliant, Spiro. Is the election going to go ahead, do you think? Are you sure that it will happen in November?
No, I don't think that any of us can be sure of anything other than the fact that things are going to get more unstable, I believe, as the election approaches. I wouldn't hold anything, off the table at this point. Just 6 months ago, we could have never imagined we would be in the position we are now. So in another 5 months from now, who knows what's going to transpire to take place between now and then. And I think that we're going to be in for one hell of a ride, to be honest with you, Richie.
No doubt. Patrick, who's in the UK, says Spiro is a terrific interviewer and a clear-minded soul. I catch him on at FKTVIS. He is a brilliant interviewer. Do check out Spiro's channel on YouTube. It's Spiro Skouras, Skouras, and activistpost.com, which I've always had a lot of time for. And when Spiro started working there, it was a match made in heaven for me. Should we be worried about news in the last 24, 36 hours? that there's been a bit of an escalation on the kind of Indo-Chinese border, the Indian-Chinese border, and we've also obviously seen this explosion in that shared facility between North Korea and South Korea. I've often believed that our old pal Gerald Celente, I think Gerald is onto something when he says they want to push us towards, a big global conflict. Is that worrying, or are these the sorts of skirmishes that happen from time to time, Spiro, and maybe we should rest easy? What do you think?
Well, I don't want to give kind of a blanket answer on that, but I think that it may be a little bit of both playing into that. I mean, we have all been become so consumed about these recent events, of course, with the coronavirus, and then with the civil unrest taking place, that everyone's kind of lost sight of the geopolitical spectrum. And I believe that there are certain nation states, like potentially North Korea, for example, which could actually be a lot of people consider to be a puppet state, basically, which provides the U.S. and the West the excuse to have a presence there in the South China Sea and in that area around China and in the Far East. And we did see some very disturbing stuff, as you mentioned, coming out of between the border clashes with China and India there. This has been a long-standing issue that has been going on there, and we're starting to see some flare-ups there. But, I wouldn't put it past there to be some sort of conflicts and tensions taking place, no doubt. But at the same time, I think it's important that we understand ultimately all of these global players, all of these major countries especially, are all a part of the same agenda. They're all a part of the United Nations, for example, most of them, right? And they're all on board with this new digital system, which is the new paradigm, which is unfolding and taking place right now. So, and we're in the middle of a transition into right now. So, ultimately, on some levels, I would argue that they're on the same page, while there may be other disputes taking place, and others may be distractions as well. So it's important to, when we see this information, to consider the source and to consider, who benefits always, and really take it with a grain of salt at times.
You're listening to Spiro Skouras, who is a bit of a good egg, as they say in Blighty, meaning that as I was left down, well, not left down, I suppose left down. John was due to be on with me, John Waters, and I was going down another road there, and Spiro said, I'll come on and chat with you, Richie. And best news I've had all day, top man, Spiro Skouras. You can ask him anything. Very well briefed. Let me ask you this then, my friend. Let's move towards Black Lives Matters and something that the Fox News presenter Tucker Carlson said the other evening on his programme. He said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, that it is now the biggest political party in the United States. A, is he right? And B, will we see in the near future political candidates emerging from that particular movement? What say you?
Well, I did see that episode of Tucker Carlson tonight that you're referencing, and it was profound. And he did state afterwards that was his the most watched episode on TV across all different types of television, at least here in the U.S. So that gives an insight into how many people are tuning into this, or either concerned about it, or want to get a different perspective or what's going on, because obviously it's taken center stage here. And no doubt about it, in my personal view, and based off of, the research that I've done, and I'm in the midst still of conducting that research, but this, to me, if you were to ask me right now, is this a completely grassroots operation? I would have to say no, because what are the chances that a completely grassroots organization created by 3 black women would garner the support of the entire establishment? I'm talking about mega corporations like Amazon and others, who have thrown their weight behind this, who, when you go to Amazon, they have a banner right there, saying, Black Lives Matter, all this, so the massive amounts of funding going in there, politicians supporting this, Hollywood supporting this, coming out in droves, the media as well. So this to me appears to be essentially a second wave in the order out of chaos scenario that we're experiencing right now. When we look at the big picture of where we're going, and if we compare that, with what we've gone through in the past, whenever there is great crisis, they try to enact great change. And if we use 9/11 for an example, it wasn't just the one event of the planes hitting the towers and the towers coming down, and that was it. There was a series of events there that took place that kept the people distracted just enough and divided just enough to keep that chaos going and perpetually, and to foment that division as we're seeing now. And I think that this is just the next stage, part 2 basically of what we were seeing initially with the COVID outbreaks and everything. That was sort of the first phase to really launch this new project, this new campaign here in 2020. Now that the weather has gotten nice, and we have to keep in mind that the social engineers that are running these projects, they have war gamed them for a long time. And they have, computer models and artificial intelligence and everything like this to where they can, predict with a certain degree of accuracy the reactions and movements of people in public and even in mass. So here we are entering the summer, the warm weather. Everyone's tired and restless from the lockdowns. They want to get out. We have seen over the last several years that movements like Antifa and Black Lives Matter have gained momentum, and they have been practicing and wargaming their scenarios by carrying out some of these demonstrations and other violent actions which do take place at these events. So I think that this is just another phase rolling out that we're seeing taking place right now as we do approach the elections. And I'm not to say that the elections, I don't have much faith in the electoral system, and personally I believe that whoever sits on the throne is more likely a puppet than not. But not getting into that, I believe that there will be a next shoe to drop, another event to take place or something as we start to approach the end of summer and start to get closer to the elections. As the vaccine is going to be ready, this new COVID vaccine, they're saying is going to be ready as early as October.
Yeah.
As we have the presidential elections coming up, I mean, to me, these are the ingredients of a perfect storm approaching.
Have we seen the last of Hillary Clinton? There's a documentary running in the UK at the moment on Sky Documentaries. I don't think it's brand new. I think it aired in the US earlier. But it's a beautifully kind of whitewashing exercise, about Hillary Clinton and her past. And I just wonder, have we seen the last of her? I mean, her husband used to be known famously as the first black president, which was monumental bollocks, as you and I both know. But she is liked by a lot of African-American leaders. I know that. I could name a few of them. And I wonder if we've seen the last of her in public life. What do you think?
Well, I mean, she's still, around publicly at this point. She was gone for a little while, and I don't think that we have seen the end of Hillary, of course, just like we haven't seen the end of Obama. These are, some of the less main proponents, main figureheads that they have to sell these division and to sell these ideals and everything to the public. I don't know. Like I said, I wouldn't put anything off the table. I would be surprised, to be honest with you, if Joe Biden actually does go toe to toe with Trump. Like I said, there's all kinds of different scenarios that I could get into, but they're hypothetical at this point. But regardless of whether or not we see, if Hillary were to disappear into the pages of history tomorrow, the agendas that she supports and that she seeks to carry out continue to live on, and I think are stronger today than they ever have been before.
No doubt about it. It's this agenda. One of the things, by the way, folks, John has been in touch. John Waters. We'll schedule John for tomorrow. We'll get him back on tomorrow, or if not, on Monday. So that's nice. Spiro Skouras is a great journalist. I've a lot of time for him. I have had for a long time. And you can follow him on YouTube at Spiro Skouras. He's on Twitter, Spiro Skouras. And the channel on YouTube packed with terrific content. Really well researched and resourced and very well briefed. I use that term about a few people. Very well briefed. And he's on with me at the moment. Activist Post radio.com. So it's terrific to have Spiro on, jumping in at the last minute today. Most people would be terrified, Spiro, of going on live radio with nothing prepared, but not you, my friend. I appreciate that. So we're not sure there will be an election. My friend, who I give a mention to quite a lot because she helps me out, Jean Ann, very, very smart woman, and she says, you know, how sometimes how brilliantly malevolent and fiendishly clever the agenda is, but because we're intelligent, if we were in their shoes, we could do a lot worse. And I often wonder, if I was in charge of this dystopian agenda, Spiro, what I would do is I would make sure the election went ahead, but I would throw the election to the Democratic candidate and make it look like Trump was the victim of some sort of malfeasance just to stir the pot. And the more I think about that, the more I think that might happen. You know what I'm saying? Trump mightn't succeed, and it'll be done in such a way as to make his base think that he was hard done by, and the sort of disorder and chaos that might come out of that then, well, it might be like nothing we've ever seen before. What do you think?
Well, that's a great point, Richie. I mean, if we look at, if their goal is to create division, cause chaos, and ultimately, I believe to, change, not only fundamentally change this country and many others, and erase the history, all that kind of stuff, then we're doomed to repeat the history once it's erased. But if their goal is to cause chaos and division and everything like that, in order to usher in this new paradigm, that would certainly be an option that I'm sure that they have on the table. Another option, and I almost don't even want to say this, publicly, live on radio, but I have to at this point, and I want to make very clear that I'm not condoning or endorsing this or anything like that. It is, what better way to really drive the stake through the heart of the country and cause massive civil unrest on a scale never before seen is if Trump were to meet the same fate, so to speak, as John F. Kennedy, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't rule out that possibility that they may try to take him out, whether overtly or covertly, whether he's claimed a victim of the virus or if there's who knows what different scenario. But that, to me, is something that we absolutely have to consider, be on the watch for, and, amongst many other possible scenarios that could play out here.
Spiro is with us. He'll stay with us for another 5 or 6 minutes, will you, Spiro? Because one or two more questions. Lots of interest in this on Twitter, understandably. Again, go to the YouTube channel, folks. Check him out. Activistpost.com, doing a lot of brilliant work, collating information and publishing information that isn't available anywhere else. While all of this is going on, something which I know you've been speaking about and that you're interested in, but it's getting no play, not even in the indie media. New sanctions on Syria imposed by the aforementioned Donald Trump's government are going to destroy the country, according to some of Bashar al-Assad's most loyal international allies. They've been saying these sanctions are going to do for Assad once and for all. How worried should we be about that, and what impact might that have on the support that he currently enjoys from Vladimir Putin? You see, we all thought Syria had gone away, didn't we? They'd pushed ISIS back and back and back. They did that with the help of Russia, and it looked to be on the up and up. But new sanctions are going to cripple the country, a la Venezuela. What do you think, Spiro?
I did see this headline recently here last night and this morning. This is, a new development, but it's an old strategy. It's an old tactic. We have to remember that, economic warfare is in fact a form of warfare, which we are experiencing in our countries right now. This is far from over there in Syria. I would say, as far as the U.S., as far as I know, still has boots on the ground, troops there, basically guarding Syria's oil, stealing it from them. And Trump's outright proclaimed that, we're going to take the oil. We should have taken the oil in Iraq. We didn't. We're doing it now. So that to me right there is unbelievable, regardless of who says it, whether it was Obama or Trump or anyone. That's how do you, invade another country, a sovereign nation, and then proclaim, hey, because it costs us so much money, we're just going to take your oil as compensation.
Yeah.
So this is another form of warfare taking place here. And, the U.S. and the West, especially the U.S., has, a long history, as we all know, of trying to get other nations, sovereign nations, to bend to their will through economic pressure, through economic warfare, and various other covert means as well. So it's very interesting to see this play out and develop right now. As, like I said, everyone's all distracted about the civil unrest, the COVID-19. Not many people are paying attention to what else is taking place geopolitically, which would signal to me that we actually should really pay attention to what else is taking place and transpiring behind the scenes. Which leads me to one more point, Richie, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Go ahead.
This week is the second week of a major trial that's taking place right here in the U.S., where the Fluoride Action Network and others are suing the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, right now. This is the second week of the case, and essentially the lawsuit is to end the deliberate fluoridation of water in the public's drinking supply.
Brilliant.
And there's all sorts of studies taking place right now, and it's getting blacked out by the media. Nobody in the media is talking about this, only the independent alternative media. And to me, this is one of the most important cases of our lifetimes, because there are studies after studies showing that the fluoride, as I'm sure you're aware and your listeners are aware as well, lowers the IQ of people. So it makes you more docile. I mean, so this is taking place right now, and I just really wanted to make people, aware of this so they could, spread the information, help to show others that, hey, there are some good things happening. To me, this is a good thing that's taking place. I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be at this point, but essentially, I spoke recently with the members of the Fluoride Action Network, and as well as a couple of years ago, and they believe that if they were to win this suit against the federal government, that it would have a chain reaction around the world to where other countries who do fluoridate their water would follow suit and end the practice of forced medication.
Forced medication is right. I often wondered, because where I come from in Ireland, Waterford City, when I lived in Waterford, the water supply was definitely fluoridated. That might have changed, although I doubt it. And I would have drank that water for years and years and years. As a kid who played sport and was always running around, I drank gallons of water a day. But when I found out about fluoride, I stopped and I began drinking bottled water. I could never get distilled water. That's a massive, massive issue that doesn't get enough coverage. And thanks for talking about that, Spiro. I've had a couple of messages and an email from a friend who says, don't forget, Richie, that the Venezuelan government is going to sue the UK and the Bank of England to have its gold returned. That's another massive story which the UK media doesn't want to touch as well. These are tyrannical times. Let me ask you this before you go, and I don't want to end today's conversation on a negative, because I love you, my friend. We've never met, but I love you. I love listening to you. I don't want to be negative, but do you take any measures to prevent this information getting you down? Because I know you have a job, which is even more remarkable, really, to me, that you managed to do your day job to earn the shillings that you need to earn like everybody else. And then you put out this amazing content. And this is not bullshit, it's amazing content. When you're up to your elbows in it and up to your neck in it, it's misery. Do you take any steps to prevent that from bearing down on you and upsetting you and, putting your emotional balance, out of kilter? Do you do anything to help yourself like that?
Well, first of all, Richie, thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I listen to the show all the time. I don't really ever miss an episode. Now, as far as, the work that I do, yes, I do have a full-time job and, working with Activist Post. I don't make any money at all whatsoever for my journalism, not from Activist Post, not from YouTube, nobody. Just wanted to make that clear. As far as, for steps that I take is, yes, this is a battle on all fronts, on all levels, really. And you have to be, at peace with yourself and have to be in a certain mindset not to get caught up in all of these various operations that are meant and designed to attack you emotionally and spiritually in so many different ways. And I really don't have, to be honest with you, too much of a problem. My problem is that I do too much. I'm burning the candle on both ends, and sometimes I get a little bit burnt out. But as far as what's unfolding and taking place, what motivates me is to offer an alternative perspective to what we're being told by the establishment, backed up with facts, documents, history, and then also include my projections or speculation or analysis, you could even say, based on history and everything that we've seen in the past and where we're at now going forward. So that's just really what motivates me, and these are unprecedented times that we're living in right now, and this, I believe, is the most critical time of our lives that we're in right now. And the establishment, the system is in the process of transitioning into a new system of control and using these crises to propel us and justify this transition into this new paradigm, which will forever change humanity, I believe, because it is a transhumanist agenda, ultimately.
Listen, mate, you're an absolute gentleman for jumping in today. I really appreciate that. I owe you one. You bring a lot of quality to every program you appear on, and your own YouTube channel is unmissable. Spiro Skouras, folks, live on the line this afternoon. And I can't wait till, we'll speak to Spiro probably several times before then, but on December 23rd, he's going to tell you a story that's connected to Christmas, that's going to have you laughing like hyenas, and it's a true story, and it's brilliant, and I can't wait for him to tell you that. Thanks for coming on again today, Spiro. Look after yourself, my friend, and we'll speak again real soon.
My pleasure, Richie. Anytime. Have a great show. Thank you so much.
You're a legend. Thank you. Thanks, Spiro. Spiro there, that was lovely of him, wasn't it, to drop in? I really appreciate that. It made life easier for me, and he's great value. Like I said, very well briefed. John was asleep in his chair, John Waters. Now, it's both of our faults. Because I checked in with him. But I didn't ring. I checked in. And he didn't get back to me. And I sent him an email. He didn't get back to me. And I could have rung, but I didn't. So it's both of our faults. We've had a giggle about it. And John will be on the programme tomorrow, which is nice. Because you've got to have a kind of a shit happens approach to life, don't you? Don't you? Improvise, adapt and overcome, I say. I've had a couple of abusive emails about my rant earlier on from people who just don't understand. Or they are willfully obtuse. They hear what they want to hear. So I'm going to reiterate it. I'm going to say for the very last time in my life. And my nose has just grown by 4 inches. I'm going to say for the last time today. I believe that history is significant. And it has a bearing on what happens today. I certainly do. I believe that black people can and do face discrimination in their lives. I would be stupid if I didn't believe that. What I don't believe and don't accept is that the country, the one I currently reside in, is institutionally racist. And I won't be told by anybody that by not accepting that, I'm somehow racist. That I should believe the activists who say everything is racist. No, I don't, because I've had the good fortune to meet many black people through this programme, here and in the United States, who completely disagree with the notion that we're institutionally racist. And I believe, and I'm not going to go into it now because I've said it too many times before, I believe that it's the current paradigm, the protests, the never-ending discussion of matters race is all part of a programme. And I believe there is empirical evidence to support that point of view. There are always idiots. Some of my right-wing listeners, and I do have quite a few, I don't know why, but I do, they won't like it when I say that Tommy Robinson is a stone-cold racist. To his bone marrow. Does it make him evil? Maybe not, but he's a racist. Tommy can be seen on videos laughing uproariously when a man hands him a microphone and while doing so uses the N-word while laughing and chortling it up. Robinson is a racist. But how prevalent are people like Tommy Robinson in society? 0.00002%. We're not racist. We don't hate people of a different background to us for the bloody hell of it. We don't go about in life thinking that we are morally and intellectually superior to people because they are their family history goes to Africa or to Asia or to Latin America. That's not the case. So something else is going on. So I get these abusive emails and I say, please listen to what I'm actually saying, not what you want to believe I am saying. And when we do the phone in on this next week, you can fill your boots. You can fill your boots, man. You can come on here and you can go bananas. You can go absolutely bananas. Shouldn't have said bananas. Somebody will say that's racist now, me saying bananas. You can go crazy, right? You can come on here and call me all the names under the sun. I'll listen to you because I like a good argument. On the depression thing, I asked Spiro that question because I had a bit of a wobble a few weeks back when the oft-mentioned future missus was ill. I had a bit of a moment when I thought about going away and doing something else. And then it became more than a moment. And then it became much more than a moment. And I thought, I'm getting fed up with this now. I've been doing it since September 2014, this program. It'll be 6 years old this coming September. And it's the longest that I've ever done anything. It's the longest time I've ever committed to anything. And I began to think I'm getting fed up with it now. And then I said, I'm not going to speak to anybody about this because it always sounds like you're doing one of two things. One, sad fishing, another wonderful phrase which has entered our lexicon. Or if you're not sad fishing, what are you doing? Compliment fishing, yes, compliment fishing. And I don't want any compliments because I don't deserve them. And I'm not sad fishing. But when the future missus was ill, I thought, I've had enough of this now. I'm going to do this till the end of the summer, and I'm going to go away and do something else, if I can. I'm going to go and do mobile gardening for hire, the BBG. I'll prune your roses and I'll trim your hedges for you. There's a load of double entendres right there, yeah. A load of housewives, deserted housewives looking for a gardener. You have the BBG here. I have a lovely pair of secateurs. I wouldn't know a daffodil from a fucking buttercup, right? This is the truth of it, right? But I did have a moment because it does, doing this every day and reading this stuff and listening to this bullshit, eventually you start to wonder, what's the point, you know? Because this is the fatalist in me. What's going to change? And I said, right, I'm going to get back on air now. I'm going to give it till August. And then I'm going to say, listen, we've had a good run. It was nice knowing you. Good luck. Honestly. And that was it. And I made my mind up. But I suppose what changed my mind was the fact that one of the reasons I don't go mad and get very upset and go into a very dark place is because I get to chat with you about this shit on a daily basis. Because I get to say to you, this is crazy shit, this, isn't it? And you come back at me and you say, yeah, and I'll tell you this much, Richie. And you tweet this and you tweet that and you email. And that's about it, really. And that's what occurred to me. I thought, well, at least I've got a sounding board. At least there's some solidarity in knowing that somebody else has some inclination as to what's going on. And if I didn't have that, maybe it would be even more difficult. And how could you ever go back into, you know, the private sector anyway? How could you do that, knowing what you know? But I did have a moment. And it's not sad fishing. It's not compliment fishing. Jesus, no. Sorry for the blasphemy. No, it isn't. It isn't. I just had that moment. And when I look at people who've been writing about this stuff for years, great friends like Stephen Lendman, another brilliant guy. Check out Stephen Lendman. Paul was on the other night, Paul Craig Roberts. People who've been banging away at this for years. And I look at them and I go, how did they do that, without going bananas? Faisal has been on to say to me that he's not sure that Tommy Robinson is genuinely racist or acting it up as controlled alt-right opposition as a Mossad agent. That's very much an interesting point, Faisal. I know that Robinson has had a lot of support from Israel. I know that. But there are groups of people in Israel who do support anybody on the far right that bashes Muslims. And this has been the case for years. This is Hasbara. Well, it's another level of Hasbara. Zionists in Israel, and it isn't a dirty word, you can say Zionists, have for years been given material support to people on the right who spend most of their time bashing Muslims. No doubt about that. And there is evidence that Robinson has benefited from such support. Lennon is the guy's name. We should call him by his real name anyway. We should call him by his real name. And I'm not on any soapbox here calling him a racist. It's not good to be a racist. But I don't think that racists are evil. Racists are either stupid, poorly informed, or brought up badly. And if you've got a kid in a house that's listening to stuff about blacks and Muslims and Jews and Chinamen, you're going to be influenced by that. So I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be so quick to condemn him. But I've seen the guy. I interviewed the guy when I was based in Spain, tied him up in knots. I had him on the radio at the same time as Anjam Chowdhury. It was a brilliant interview. There is a copy of it somewhere, but for the life of me, I can't find it. I had Anjam Chowdhury, who spent some time in jail, but apparently he's out now. The radical preacher. Somebody else whom I believed was an agent of the state, by the way. I used to ask him all the time, Anjam, nobody really believes this bullshit that you believe. They might believe it in some parts of Iraq, in some parts of Afghanistan, some very conservative Islamic scholars. Yes, I have no doubt. It's out there. You see the Islamic State, you see Boko Haram. You do have these lunatics. But I didn't believe Anjam. I believed that he was basically an agent provocateur, in my opinion. In my opinion. Charlie Girl says, Richard, we all go through these emotions. You can't talk to many people about it. It's like everyone's running into a burning building, but we're all screaming it's on fire as they ignore us. It's frustrating and depressing. It is. It is. But the thing to do is to refrain from becoming an overbearing, domineering type. You've still got to have the approach of, it could be argued, or did you hear what Peter Hitchens said about the lockdown rules and how they're very Orwellian? Or did you hear that doctor from Ireland, Dr. Marcus de Bruin? No? Well, give him a listen and see what you think. That's the approach. But getting into arguments with people and getting frustrated and getting hurt and becoming emotional because you know that something is true and they're blanking you or completely ignoring you, don't get angry. It doesn't work. I think more and more people in academia, funnily enough, and more people in medicine, funnily enough, are starting to see it for what it is. I really believe it. They're starting to see it. And it's scaring them. People like Vernon Coleman, people like Dr. Marcus de Bruin. And that's a good thing. And if Marcus de Bruin and the academic... why is my mind gone blank now? The Irish academic from UCD, you know the woman I'm talking about, right? If the academic, Dolores Cahill, that's the one, if they can see the light and if they can break ranks and say, hey, look over here, this is serious, we need to talk about that, surely more will follow. And maybe that's one of the ways that we'll see our way, towards seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. Anyway, thanks to Spiro Skouras. Thank you, Spiro. The brilliant lawyer, Patricia Finn, an old friend of the show who's not been on for years. Patricia Finn will be on the Richie Allen Radio Show tomorrow. And I'll also be joined by John Waters. Packed out show tomorrow, Thursday. I'm going to leave you with, well, the man himself. Again, thanks to Spiro Skouras. Check it out on YouTube. Do subscribe to him. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. I've been the BBG. Bye now.